Barron Trump, the youngest son of one of the world's most prominent families, made a bold decision to travel alone for the first time in his life. What started as a simple quest for freedom quickly turned into an extraordinary journey that would change not just his life, but someone else's forever. What happened during his solo adventure will leave you shocked and deeply moved. Barron Trump had always lived under the spotlight. As the youngest son of one of the most famous families in the world, he was no stranger to luxury, protocol, and constant security. But deep down, Barron longed for something more freedom. He wanted to experience life beyond the rigid schedules, the flashing cameras, and the unyielding walls of privilege. At 18 years old, he craved an adventure that would allow him to blend in with the real world, even if only for a fleeting moment. The opportunity presented itself one quiet summer evening. The Trump family had traveled to a sprawling countryside estate for a private retreat. While everyone was occupied with dinner, Barron slipped away. His heart pounded as he changed into a plain hoodie and jeans, shedding the tailored suits and polished shoes that screamed his identity. With no phone, no credit cards, and no security detail, he quietly exited through the back gate. For the first time, he felt invisible, and it thrilled him. He made his way to a small bus station on the outskirts of the estate, purchasing a ticket to a nearby town with the little cash he'd brought. The bus ride felt surreal. No one stared at him, no one whispered his name, and for once, he was just another passenger gazing out the window at the passing fields. The anonymity was exhilarating, but things began to take a turn as he arrived at the unfamiliar town. The streets were bustling with activity, far from the serene countryside he had just left. Bright neon signs lit up the sidewalks, and the air was thick with the aroma of street food and the chatter of strangers. He wandered aimlessly, savoring his newfound independence, until he realized something unsettling. His wallet, which held his remaining cash, was gone. Whether he dropped it or it had been stolen, he couldn't say. All he knew was that he was now completely alone, with no way to get back. The weight of his decision began to sink in. Barron found himself walking deeper into the less polished parts of the town. The flashy lights faded into dimly lit alleys, and the chatter gave way to an eerie quiet. He had no phone to call for help, no identification to prove who he was, and no money to buy even a bottle of water. For the first time in his life, Barron felt vulnerable. Night fell, and the temperature dropped sharply. Barron's hoodie provided little protection against the biting cold. His stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since lunch. He tried to stay calm, telling himself this was part of the adventure, but deep down, fear crept in. He hadn't anticipated how harsh the real world could be. As he walked down a particularly desolate street, a faint voice called out to him. "You lost, kid." Barron turned to see a man sitting on a worn-out sleeping bag near the corner of the alley. His clothes were tattered, his face weathered, but his eyes held a kind curiosity. Barron hesitated, unsure whether to approach. But the man's expression wasn't threatening, it was empathetic. And in that moment, Barron realized he had no other choice. "Yeah," Barron admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think I'm lost." The man gestured for him to sit down. "Well, I've been lost for a while," he said with a wry smile. "Maybe we can figure it out together." Barron sat cautiously, feeling the cold concrete seep through his jeans. The man introduced himself as Sam, a former mechanic who'd fallen on hard times after losing his job and his home. Despite his own struggles, Sam offered Barron his only blanket and shared a small container of soup he'd gotten from a nearby shelter. Barron's hands trembled as he accepted the food. He'd never tasted anything so simple yet so profoundly comforting. As they talked, Barron kept his identity a secret, merely explaining that he was far from home and had no way to contact his family. Sam didn't pry, he simply listened. For the first time in his life, Barron felt what it meant to rely on the kindness of a stranger. The layers of privilege and fame melted away in that alley, leaving him exposed to the rawness of human connection. Little did he know, this encounter would set the stage for a life-changing journey not just for himself, but for the man who had shown him compassion when he needed it most. As the chill of the night deepened, Sam noticed Barron shivering despite the blanket draped over his shoulders. Without hesitation, Sam reached into his meager stash of belongings and pulled out an extra scarf. "Here," he said, handing it to Barron. "It's not much, but it'll help." Barron stared at the scarf, his throat tightening with emotion. He had never seen someone give so selflessly, especially when they had so little to offer. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice cracking. Sam chuckled lightly. "Don't mention it, kid. Out here, we've got to look out for each other." The two sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the distant city their only soundtrack. Barron's mind raced. He had grown up in a world where people's kindness often came with strings attached, where generosity was a calculated move. But Sam's actions felt genuine, untainted by any ulterior motives. As the hours passed, Sam shared bits and pieces of his life story. Once a skilled mechanic, he had fallen on hard times after his workshop shut down due to financial struggles. A series of unfortunate events had left him homeless, and though he had tried to rebuild his life, the odds always seemed stacked against him. Yet, despite everything, Sam remained hopeful. "Life's tough," he said, "but it's got its moments. You just have to keep going." Barron listened intently, feeling a deep respect for this man who had endured so much yet still found the strength to help a stranger. He realized how little he truly understood about the world outside his bubble of privilege. Sam's resilience and kindness were a stark contrast to the superficiality he had often witnessed in his own circles. When morning finally broke, Sam guided Barron to a nearby shelter that offered breakfast. "They've got good coffee," Sam said with a grin, trying to lighten the mood. The shelter staff welcomed them warmly, offering steaming cups of coffee and fresh pastries. Barron, unused to such simple fare, found himself savoring every bite. It wasn't just the food, it was the sense of community, the shared understanding among people who had nothing but still found joy in the little things. As they sat together, Barron's curiosity got the better of him. "Sam, why did you help me?" he asked. Sam shrugged. "Why not? You looked like you needed it. And out here, you learn pretty quickly that kindness is the only thing that keeps you going. Someone helped me once when I was down. Just passing it along." Barron nodded, feeling a lump rise in his throat. He wanted to tell Sam who he really was, to explain that he wasn't just another lost teenager. But something held him back. Perhaps it was the fear of ruining the purity of their connection, or maybe it was the realization that for once, he was being treated like any other person, no fame, no wealth, just himself. When it was time to leave, Barron thanked Sam profusely. "I'll never forget this," he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. Sam waved him off with a smile. "Just take care of yourself, kid. That's all I ask." As Barron walked away, he glanced back one last time. Sam was already helping someone else, offering his blanket to an elderly woman who had just arrived at the shelter. The sight etched itself into Barron's memory. He didn't know how, but he vowed to find a way to repay Sam's kindness. And in that moment, a seed of determination took root in his heart, one that would soon grow into a life-changing plan for them both. As Barron returned to the bustling city streets, the weight of his experience settled heavily on his shoulders. The glimmer of adventure that had once excited him now felt like a distant memory. He had set out to escape his world of privilege, but instead, he had stepped into a harsh reality that humbled him in ways he never imagined. Sam's kindness lingered in his mind, a beacon of humanity that shone in stark contrast to the loneliness and fear he had felt the night before. Barron made his way back to the bus station, his pocket still empty, but his resolve stronger than ever. The journey back to the estate was quieter this time. He sat by the window, staring at the passing scenery with a newfound perspective. The fields and hills he had admired on his way out now seemed distant, almost irrelevant, compared to the stories and struggles he had witnessed in the heart of the city. Arriving at the estate, Barron slipped through the back gate as quietly as he had left. His absence had gone unnoticed, or so he thought. His mother, Melonia, spotted him entering the house and immediately noticed something different. "Barron, where have you been?" she asked, concern lacing her voice. "Just out," he replied, his tone subdued. He wasn't ready to share what had happened, not yet. The experience felt too personal, too raw to put into words. Over the next few days, Barron couldn't shake the image of Sam from his mind. He replayed their conversations, Sam's smile, and the way he selflessly helped not just him but anyone in need. Barron felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and a burning desire to repay that kindness. He knew he had the resources to make a real difference in Sam's life, but he also wanted to do it in a way that honored the man's dignity. Late one evening, Barron sat down with a pen and paper, jotting down ideas. He considered giving Sam money, but quickly dismissed the thought. Sam wasn't a charity case. He was a person of immense strength and resilience who deserved an opportunity to rebuild his life. Barron decided on a plan that combined generosity with respect. The following morning, Barron made a few discreet phone calls. He reached out to contacts who could help him locate Sam and arrange what he had in mind. The process took a couple of days, but eventually everything was set. Barron couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness as he prepared to meet Sam again. He wanted the gesture to be perfect, not just for Sam, but for himself. This wasn't just about repaying a debt. It was about honoring a man who had shown him a side of humanity he had never experienced before. When the day finally arrived, Barron stepped into a sleek black SUV and instructed the driver to take him to the city. As they neared the shelter where Sam had taken him for breakfast, Barron's heart raced. He hoped Sam would be there, hoped he could convey just how much that one night had meant to him. The SUV pulled up to the curb, and Barron stepped out, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater. He spotted Sam sitting on a bench near the shelter, chatting with a few other homeless individuals. Sam's face lit up with surprise as Barron approached. "Kid, you made it back," he exclaimed, his tone filled with genuine joy. Barron smiled. "I told you I'd never forget." He took a deep breath, his hands slightly trembling as he gestured to the SUV behind him. "Sam, there's something I need to show you." Sam looked puzzled, but followed Barron to the car. Inside was not just a warm meal or a simple gift, but the beginning of a new life. Barron had arranged for a small apartment, stocked with necessities, and a job opportunity at a local garage. "You told me you were a mechanic," Barron said, his voice steady but emotional. "I figured it's time you got back to what you're great at." Sam's eyes widened, his tough exterior cracking as tears welled up. "Kid, I don't know what to say." Barron placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to say anything. Just promise me you'll keep going. You taught me that." As Sam stepped into the SUV to be taken to his new home, Barron watched with a sense of fulfillment he had never felt before. For the first time, he understood the true power of kindness, not just in receiving it, but in giving it back. The SUV rolled through the streets of the city, carrying Sam toward a future he hadn't dared to dream of. As they approached the apartment complex Barron had arranged, Sam's breath caught. The building wasn't extravagant, but it was clean, modern, and situated in a quiet neighborhood. For a man who had spent years calling the cold pavement his home, it was nothing short of a palace. "This is for me?" Sam asked, his voice trembling with disbelief. Barron nodded, smiling warmly. "It's all yours, Sam. A fresh start." As they stepped inside the apartment, Sam was greeted by a cozy living room furnished with a plush couch, a coffee table, and a small TV. The kitchen was stocked with essentials, and the bedroom had a bed that looked impossibly comfortable compared to the hard surfaces he was used to. A tear rolled down Sam's cheek as he took it all in. "Kid, I don't deserve this," he said, his voice breaking. "You deserve more than this, Sam," Barron replied. "This is just the beginning. You've got a job waiting for you at a garage nearby. They know your story and are excited to have you on board." Sam's hands trembled as he sat down on the couch, overcome with emotion. He'd spent so many years feeling invisible, overlooked by the world, and now here was this young man who had gone out of his way to see him, to help him. "Why me?" Sam finally asked. Barron sat beside him, his expression thoughtful. "Because you showed me kindness when I needed it most. You didn't ask who I was or what I could do for you. You just helped. And that's something I'll never forget." The two sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the moment sinking in. Sam's gratitude was palpable, but so was Barron's sense of purpose. This wasn't just about repaying a debt. It was about honoring a connection that had changed them both. Before leaving, Barron handed Sam a small envelope. "This is for any immediate expenses," he explained. "But the rest is up to you." Sam opened the envelope to find a modest amount of cash and a handwritten note that read, "Keep going, just like you told me." As Barron walked out of the apartment, he felt lighter, freer. He had set out on an adventure to escape his life of privilege, but what he found was far more meaningful. He discovered the strength of the human spirit, the power of kindness, and the joy of giving back. Sam stood at the window, watching Barron leave. For the first time in years, he felt hope real, tangible hope that things could get better. And as he looked around his new home, he made a silent promise to himself to pay it forward, just as Barron had done for him. Sam woke up in his new apartment the next morning, the sunlight streaming through the windows. It felt surreal, like waking up in a dream he didn't want to end. He walked around, touching the furniture, the walls, and the kitchen counters, as if to reassure himself that it was all real. For years, he had grown used to waking up on cold concrete, with nothing but the clothes on his back. But now, he had a bed, a roof, and a future. The first thing Sam did was visit the garage Barron had arranged for him. The shop owner, a kind man named Joe, welcomed him warmly. "Barron told me all about you," Joe said with a smile. "We're excited to have you on the team." Sam dove into his work with enthusiasm, rediscovering his passion for fixing cars. The garage became more than just a workplace. It was a place where he felt valued and respected. His hands, once idle and cold, now worked tirelessly, rebuilding engines and, in a way, rebuilding himself. He learned the names of his colleagues, shared meals with them, and slowly began to feel like he was part of a community again. But Sam's gratitude didn't stop at his own success. Remembering the people he had shared streets and shelters with, he started small initiatives to give back. He saved a portion of his earnings to buy blankets, warm clothes, and meals for the homeless in his area. He returned to the shelter where he had taken Barron for breakfast and volunteered his time, helping others the way Barron had helped him. Word of Sam's transformation spread, and it inspired others in the community. His acts of kindness created a ripple effect, encouraging local businesses and individuals to support the homeless. The shelter received more donations, and more people stepped up to volunteer. Sam's journey became a testament to how one act of kindness can spark a chain reaction, touching lives far beyond what anyone could imagine. As for Barron, he occasionally checked in on Sam, but he kept his distance, letting him flourish on his own. One day, Sam invited Barron to the garage, where he presented him with a small token of appreciation: a restored vintage car. "I couldn't have done this without you, kid," Sam said with a grin. Barron chuckled. "I think you would have found your way eventually, Sam. You've got too much heart not to." As they shook hands, both men felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Barron had set out to escape his world of privilege and found meaning in helping someone else rise above their struggles. Sam had been given a second chance and was determined to pass it on. Together, they had proven that kindness, even in its simplest form, has the power to change lives and inspire others to do the same.